right hand and repeat after me.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
About this stunning situation in Florida, where the Secretary of State says only 629 votes, 629 votes separate.
Reasonable certainty. Punch in the money.
I am furious. They give me a ballot that's illegal. They put it on a machine that doesn't work.
What is at stake is the integrity of our democracy, making sure that the will of the American people.
Many people probably voted for Buchanan, meaning to vote for Gore.
What happens? Do we go to jail? Because I'm willing to go to jail.
No, I just felt that
It was mass confusion. At 7 o'clock when the polls opened, we knew that there was a problem because people were walking out of the polls distraught, calling their husbands, calling their wives, telling them to be careful.
I'm a veteran from 1942, Marine, Purple Heart. I'm entitled to my vote. They're just taking it away from me.
statewide we had complaints of everything from police intimidation, police threatening people with tickets for loitering who happen to be standing in line. We've had reports of people being required to produce multiple pieces of identification when they have a valid voter registration card. There's no such requirement under Florida law.
On election day, I got calls from a lot of people who complained that they had gone to vote and that the local precinct didn't have their name on the list.
They said, I don't have my name there. Why my name is not there? So they sent me to see a clerk.
There were no bilingual pollers. There were no bilingual translators. There was no one there.
You know, the story of the 2000 presidential election is a multifaceted story that has to do with decision-making at a lot of different levels and inconsistencies in policies and in voting systems and technologies.
But the story of the 2000 presidential election started long before Election Day.
Elevated subway. And as the subway heads to New York, there comes a point where it makes a very abrupt left-hand turn, almost a 90-degree turn. And when it does that, the wheels of the subway always screech loudly. If you look out the window, that's when you can see the World Trade Center. I was sitting on the subway reading, as I always do. Train made the left-hand turn, the wheels screeched. Everybody in the car jumped up and started to gasp. Oh! And I look up, and there's the building with smoke pouring out of it. I didn't know if that was my son's building because Tower 1 and Tower 2 were in perfect symmetry. And I didn't know which tower I'm looking at. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, how did my son get out of there? Well, I don't know how, but he got out of there. There's no two ways about that. He can't be in there, because anybody who's in there is going to die.
Blowback. It's a CIA term. Blowback does not mean simply the unintended consequences of foreign operations. It means the unintended consequences of foreign operations that were deliberately kept secret from the American public, so that when the retaliation comes, the American public is not able to put it in context, to put cause and effect together, that they come up with questions like, why do they hate us?
The forces of evil declared war on the American
Not since Pearl Harbor has there been so much national
Freedom and democracy are under attack.
Why do they hate us? That's the question everybody's asking.
Our government did not want the forensic question asked, what were their motives? And instead chose to say they were just evildoers.
And the towers keep falling. Every 5 minutes, they go to the tower again. I got on the phone, I called NBC. I'm listening to your newscast. How many times are you going to show those goddamn towers coming down? Don't you have any respect for the people who have family and friends in those towers? Do we have to keep watching them fall down? I've watched them fall down 50 times already. When are you going to stop? Please stop. You're ripping my heart out. God gave me two of the greatest sons any parent could ever ask for. Why he took one back, I'll never know.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Somebody had to pay for this. Somebody had to pay for 9/11. I want enemy dead. I want to see their bodies stacked up for what they did, for taking my son.
There was a moment when the entire world was behind us. There was 1 million people demonstrating in the streets of Tehran in favor of the United States. We had the world behind us. Now kids are dying. Billions are being spent every month. Animosity against the United States is stronger now than it ever has been in history. What happened here? Is it just the experience of September 11th? Or is there something else going on here? When something like this happens, you gotta take stock of this. You gotta understand what went wrong here.
Truck driving was a fun thing for him. He enjoyed it. He was told and convinced that he would be safe.
They all had driven trucks and were truck drivers before they went over there.
I went to make a better life for my family.
We were told we would not be sent into any areas of known danger.
Well, I trusted the company. They told us, well, you won't have to worry. You have plenty of protection. Guaranteed $140,000 in 9 months. Anything that sounds too good to be true usually is.
Can the Secretary of Defense, can the Vice President, can this administration take the military to war to feed the greed of contractors?
We've employed corporations, private entities, to carry out inherent government functions.
They should not be using civilians for combat operations.
A corporation is going to put human needs on the bottom if it conflicts with profit.
Basic safety precautions weren't taken.
Forcing them to go out and to drive into battle zones.
They cut corners left and right.
No sharpshooters, no escorts, no flak vests, no helmets.
No armor, no weapons.
No rear gunner, no armored vehicles, not even a map.
It's just wrong.
God damn!
Jesus Christ. God help us all, Lord.
How do you place a value on human life? They're willing to sacrifice people.
David, the Patriot Act was created after 9/11. It allows federal agents to investigate suspected cases of terrorism swiftly in order to better protect our country.
I think the Patriot Act is unpatriotic because it undermines our liberty. I'm concerned, as everybody is, about the terrorist attack. Timothy McVeigh was a vicious terrorist. He was arrested. Terrorism, still on the books, internationally and nationally, is a criminal. It's a crime, and we should deal with it. We dealt with it rather well with Timothy McVeigh. But why I really fear it is we have drifted into a condition that we were warned against, because our early founders were very clear. They said, don't be willing to sacrifice liberty for security. Today, it seems too easy that our government and our Congresses are so willing to give up our liberties for our security. I have a personal belief that you never have to give up liberty for security. You can still provide security without sacrificing our Bill of Rights.
Humiliation for Saddam Hussein, the former dictator in captivity, being checked by a US Army doctor for head lice. Swabs of saliva are taken for a DNA check to ensure that the US has got its man and not one of his notorious body doubles. And despite his haggard appearance, after 8 months on the run, Saddam is said to be in good health, ready perhaps to stand trial. The once imperious leader who squandered billions on grand palaces and luxurious underground concrete bunkers was found in a 2.5-metre deep hole beneath a hut behind a farmhouse at Andur, near Tikrit, his hometown and former seat of power. A rug on the bedroom floor covered a trapdoor leading to Saddam's final hiding place.
We live here in the United States of amnesia. No one remembers anything before Monday morning. Everything is a blank. We have no history.
Guatemala, 1954. The United States intervened unilaterally to protect its vital interests. Lebanon, 1958. The United States feels its policy of containment in the Middle East is threatened. Responds openly and unilaterally. The United States intervened in Laos, the Congo, Brazil.
There are so many theories about what happened in Iraq and why we really went in, but when you look at the history of the United States, almost every president, there is something we don't like somewhere in the world, and we've got to dispense military force.
Ronald Reagan invaded Grenada in 1983.
Last night, I ordered U.S. military forces to Panama.
This is not about one president or one party. We fight as a nation because we perceive it is in our interest to fight. And we then mention words like freedom and nice common values that who can be against freedom, when in fact much more has been going on privately.
September 11th, 2001, provided a group of people deeply committed to the expansion of the American empire the opportunity to implement plans that they had been laying since 1992. At that time, a young Paul Wolfowitz was working in a subordinate position under Dick Cheney, who was then Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon. With the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Cheney orders Wolfowitz to write a plan, to write a grand strategy, that it was now our destiny, that without the Soviet Union, there is no one who can possibly approach us in military terms. It says that's the way it ought to be, and our policy must be to maintain and expand that we are the new Rome.
Well, I was in the Pentagon when we got hit. You know, yes, it did change. It was a very dramatic and terrible thing, and it does change your perspective. But the war in Iraq had nothing to do with the war on terrorism. That was a huge leap, a manufactured leap, in order to implement a very calculated and pre-developed foreign policy.
We must take the battle to the enemy, disrupt his plans, and confront the worst threats before they emerge.